Access to justice is meaningful access to courts and lawyers to have the protection and benefit of the law. I'm Shaun Jamison, and from Purdue Global Law School, and today I'm discussing the impact of remote hearings on access to justice in rural communities. In the Legal Service Corporation's report, The Justice Gap, 94% of low-income rural Americans surveyed did not get the legal help they needed for substantial legal problems. This is exacerbated in rural areas because incomes are generally lower and the rate of poverty is higher. 19% of the rural population has a household income below 125% of federal poverty guidelines, compared to 15% of the rest of the population. And in addition to that, legal aid is unfortunately underfunded. For every 2.8 legal aid attorneys, there are approximately 10,000 potential legal aid qualified clients. 77% of rural low-income households experienced at least one legal problem in the past year. 40% had 5 or more, and 23% had 10 or more. Moving past the US, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, only 46% of human beings on Earth had protection of the law. Without access to justice, you can be separated from your freedom, your housing, healthcare, economic well-being, environmental justice, and all of this can have a devastating impact on your dependents. While people in cities, suburbs, and experts have challenges with accessing justice, there are some exacerbating factors for rural folks. By its nature being spread out, public transportation in rural areas is limited. Even if you have reliable transportation, you have a longer trip to court, which means more time off of work and family care. That could mean a job loss or certainly lost income. As previously noted, poverty rates are higher in rural areas, which means the impact and barriers are higher. Rural areas tend to have less access to technology. Many rural areas have proportionally fewer attorneys per population than urban or suburban areas. Often, these lawyers are public lawyers and thus not available to take private cases and matters. In the ABA's report and elsewhere, that's often known as the legal desert. Further, young lawyers are not coming to rural areas, and rural attorneys nearing retirement are having trouble finding replacements. So unfortunately, even if you can get to court and you are qualified to get a lawyer or can't afford one, you might have a tough time finding one. Suddenly, with the pandemic, we had remote court complete with Zoom bombing, cat filters, I'm not a cat, and inadequate technology and ability to use that technology effectively. Moving past that, the acceptance of remote hearings has gone up pretty dramatically since the pandemic, as people use video technology now, not just for court, but for work and daily life than in the past. Some research suggests that having a choice between remote and in-person hearings improves satisfaction. And naturally, people are more accustomed to remote hearings or remote video, are more comfortable with it. Best practices are being developed, and more research will help make training and advice for courts, clients, and attorneys more effective. In a pilot project in Illinois' first judicial circuit, legal aid attorneys attended 467 video proceedings, saving the agency 633 hours of time traveling to various courthouses and 18,000 miles of driving, resulting in a savings over $11,000. In the same time, in parts of North Dakota, criminal warrant hearing appearance rates went from approximately 80% to 100%, with failure to appear rates dropping significantly across all hearing types. And other states had similar results. Remote hearings can help relieve some of those legal deserts by allowing urban attorneys to fill in gaps without the time and expense of travel. And additionally, there's features on video conferencing that allow you to have breakout rooms, counsel your client privately, negotiate with the other lawyer, do shuttle diplomacy, and that ends up having higher rates of closure of matters via video. Not only that, there is some evidence to suggest that unrepresented parties do better in video court. Challenges to remote court hearings include reduced internet access and quality connection to rural areas. Confidence using that technology is a little lower in communities that aren't used to using it as much. Average hearing portion can take longer. Some of this is due to just the technology, right? Everybody logs in, it takes them a little bit of time. Maybe they're not as accustomed to doing it, or the technology is not as stable. And that I think we can work on. But the interesting part is that the reason it's taking longer is that more people are showing up. If you have 20% more people showing up to hearings, that means that they take longer because they're actually asserting their rights. And that's actually a good problem to have. It's something the courts can definitely take to the legislature and say they need funding to deal with, but it's not a reason to not have virtual hearings. There might be cultural barriers. Rural communities are not monolithic. So, just to be aware that people might have different attitudes and histories in different rural areas. And there is a possibility that there are worse outcomes in criminal and immigration matters. So we need to do some more research post-pandemic to see if that's still true and what can be done about it. What do we need to do? Certainly address best practices through research, invest in rural internet, and make sure it actually happens, invest in better courtroom technology. Some jurisdictions have kiosks. That's where they have a private place for a person to work with access to high-speed internet. But you still have to get to town, unfortunately, to use that. And of course, we need training and support. Video hearings provide access to the courts. They're economical in rural areas compared to solving transportation or time off barriers. Certainly not one size fits all. And objections to video can be met through research, through training, through investment. And of course, yeah, definitely we need more research to support what are the best practices. So the challenge. Richard Susskind said, the current system is not an evidence-based option we consciously have chosen. It's simply where we are. We can choose to be elsewhere. So let's choose to use remote court hearings thoughtfully, following the data as one of the tools that will help us choose a future where everyone, including people in rural areas, have access to and the protection of the law.